The Arson and Explosion Squad, which you spent the majority of your career in, 13 years, so 1991, all the way through the end of your career in 2004. I got to ask, it's pretty interesting. A lot of cops, when Bill Cannon first had you on Real Crime Stories, he'd never interviewed a guy from Arson and Explosion or the Bomb Squad before to that point. So you don't hear a lot of guys, at least in that show, talking about working in units like that. So why Arson and Explosion? Why that unit for you?
Well, for me, I mean, I knew it existed only because one of my partners in NSU, her uncle worked there, and I'd heard about it from that. But I had gone to what was called the Brooklyn Career Criminal Investigation Unit, CCIU,
Mhm.
and I was excited about it. And it was part of it's funny that the unit no longer exists, but it was part of the larger group of the Special Investigations Division. And Special Investigation Division is like it's all the heavy detective bureau unit. It's got arson explosion, certainly. It had terrorist task force, major case, special frauds, missing person, computer crimes. It was just like, if you wanted to go to a great detail in the detective bureau, that's where you went. And I got lucky to go to CCIU. I made a bribery collar and I was able to use that and get into CCIU. And literally the morning I went in to sign in, I was one of 12 detectives that got sent there. There was a big brain drain and the retirements of missing persons. And the CO of missing persons, Bob Davis, complained to the commanding officer that he needed more guys. And so he said, all right, I'll give you the 12 guys that went to CCIU. And we were all spread out among the 5 boroughs. So that morning I come in, I have a cup of coffee. Lieutenant calls me and another detective, Abbate, and said, come on in. And I think he was going to give me the talk. This is what I expect. This is what you need to be doing. And he's like, listen, don't unpack your bags. You're going to headquarters. I'm like, well, why? Because you've all been transferred to missing persons. And I was just like, are you kidding me? I just got, what did I do? Because you didn't do anything. Here's why you're going. And it's done. There's nothing we can do about it. And so the morning I was really excited about it. Next thing I know, I'm in headquarters. The problem with headquarters is, headquarters, people don't know, is in Lower Manhattan. Parking is ridiculously difficult. And it's also, you spend so many years passing the headquarters, like, oh, that's the palace. That's, you look down on it. Oh, those are the suits, the non-crime fighters, and it was funny when I got there, you realize how many guys there actually were crime fighters. But it was just a fluke that right place at the right time. I went there. I worked there for about 7 months. A bunch of guys retired from arson explosion. One of my sergeants, Frank Torres, the CO of the arson squad, Jerry Sheehan, lieutenant commanding officer, he said, hey, you looking for some guys? You got any guys you want to send over? And he sent me over with another detective, Ronnie Sarr, another detective, Frank Saez, and we got transferred in there. And I'm like, listen, I don't know anything about fires. I don't know anything about bombs. I wasn't a bomb city guy. I wasn't a volunteer fireman somewhere. I wasn't in the military. I've never handled explosives. Like, no, we don't do that. We don't do the what, we do the who. And if you can hunt people and do this, you'll do well here, and we'll send you to the training for other things. And I was just so excited because the unit had a great reputation, and it was a small unit. I mean, I was one of 12 detectives, and 12 detectives for a citywide unit really isn't that much. And it's also, it's one of the oldest detective squads, and I mean, it predates the terrorist task force. I mean, it's really an old squad that got morphed in when there was a lot of terrorist activities like the Weather Underground and a lot of the 60s radicals, and it kind of formed out of that. And actually, it was a time when you had fire marshals and police detectives assigned to work together as part of teams, and that somewhere along the line, certainly before my time, got changed, where it was, we were in headquarters and they were in their fire bases. But it was just a fluke where I right place at the right time. I went into missing, kept my head down, did the work. I wasn't happy. I wasn't making overtime, but I knew that if I did a good job, I probably had a good chance of getting recognized because we were all on the same floor we're helping them with their cases. They're helping them with ours. So there's a lot of cross-pollination with the squads. And I just got
story.
lucky.
It's not in the book, but it refers to a story in the book about the 5 letter bombs that were at the UN headquarters.
In 1997, yes.
Now, and we were there round the clock for several days. And the chief of detectives wanted to know, what the heck are my detectives doing at the UN for a couple of days and nights? Nobody briefed them. Like, they knew, but they didn't know. You
Is
know
this Chief Ali?
No. This was way before.
Okay.
I can't recall who the chief detectives was at the time.
Okay.
And I forget who the CO was at the time of A&E, but somebody down at headquarters had Bill Ryan jump into an unmarked car, drive down to the UN, make his way through this litany of security to get to where we were down in the bowels of the UN, because he can't just walk in.
No, of course, there's a process, understandably.
Yeah. So he had to go through this whole layers of security. Just because you're a detective, that's international territory, by the way. You cannot just walk in on official duty. You have to be invited in. So he goes through this whole litany, finds us. We're rendering safe live letter bombs down in the garage of the UN. It wasn't actually in the garage. It was in this designated area that had access for air, but it was like enclosed in like these steel and I-beams and stuff. It was a really secure area. So if anything was to go off during the procedure, the blast pressure and frag would just go straight up the shaft. It's hard to describe it. It's just this huge shaft, but it's on a garage level, but it's off from it. Right. So we're down there working like this, and he shows up and he said, "Listen, somebody's got to go down." The chief is like, "What are you guys doing?" I says, "Bill, look at what we're doing. You know what we're doing." He says, "No, the chief wants to talk to somebody who knows what's going on here for the last few days, and you guys are still working." He says, "I was told the chief called the CO of the bomb squad, and CO of the bomb squad told the chief, well, I got senior men working down there." So, and I think at the time I started transitioning to being the intelligence coordinator. So I was kind of like the liaison with everybody.
Yeah.
So they said, go down and pick Sadowy's butt up and put it in the car and bring him forthwith back to the chief's office. And Bill did. I don't know if you remember this story, Bill. You're briefing me as to what's going on in the chief's office and whoever the lieutenant was in A&E. And but the chief wanted to know all the details. So thank goodness Bill was good, because you could be walking into the lion's den and there's a lot of personalities, big personalities with chiefs and stuff and ego.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Thank you, Bill, for helping to brief me for that ride, lights and sirens, back to 1PP.
Well, you never told me this story when you came on. Now I'm upset. You never told me this, but I guess I'm glad I'm here.
Gone. Stairwell's gone. The only way to get down there was very carefully to climb. Very carefully to climb. Anyway, on a separate note, it's in my book. I sat and said some prayers to my dead partner, asking him for God's help that morning, that Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon, Dave Williams and Steve Vieira from the FBI said we should put a team together of forensics people, sketch artists, photographer, swab samples, measurements, to lead a team down there. But they all have to be volunteers because it's pretty dangerous. There's no light, there's no power. the water was still flooding down from the broken water main. More importantly, the waistline was broken, was pouring down into that pit. Later on, caused us some medical problems, which we didn't realize at the time.
Right.
Super cold, was like being in a wind tunnel. I was asked to lead a team down there, and I did. And methodically, again, I'm curious by nature, I took a guy from ATF with me. He was a recently retired soldier from the U.S. Army, and he worked in EOD, which mirrors
Explosive Ordnance Division.
disposal, which mirrors what we do, but they have a different mission. They have an IED, a suspected IED. They set up a countercharge. They get back. They crank it off. Off they go. We don't do that. We have a crime scene to process. So it's different procedures. But he was brand new onto the national response team. Very, very knowledgeable man.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where my knowledge from going to Brooklyn Automotive High School and car parts played a big part. And my old partner, Larry Riccio, who helped train me, him and Jeff, he was in auto crime, and he taught me about confidential VIN numbers. And I'm not gonna say any more about that because it's a very interesting story and it's very lengthy. It's in my book, and I'm seeing something here that says Don, the human Q-tip, Sadowy. Ask him, Jerry Sheehan from A&E, him and Bill Ryan. I'm in an air shaft. Now, I mean, there's the bowels of the complex are underground for heating and air conditioning and everything. I'm in an air shaft. I'm searching for minute evidence. I'm going through different levels through an air shaft, and it gets real narrow. I got a radio on me, and I got my fat butt in a Nomex jumpsuit with a helmet and boots and gloves on. And I don't know what level where I am because this thing snakes all over the place. And I'm saying, holy crap, I don't want to get trapped in here. And I don't know what level I'm on. There's 5 levels. And everybody's working separately like coal miners. Okay.
Right.
I get stuck in there. And I take my K-bar and I knock out one of these louver vents. And I scared the bejesus out of a couple of guys working right up above them, because there's noise and everything. And I'm trying to get their attention. Hey, it's me. Who the hell? Who is that? I says, it's me, Sadowy. I'm stuck up here. I says, what level am I on? That was it. Everybody started teasing me. Now, in the morning and in the evening, there's a briefing. At the evening briefing, it looked like, now remember, I'm in a jumpsuit, work gloves, helmet, and everything. I had a respirator on. All you could see clearly is my eyes. I'm like a raccoon. I'm covered with soot, like I was dipped in it. And Jerry Sheehan said something at the briefing with the FBI as, let's hear from the human Q-tip, Detective Sadowy from the bomb squad. Tell us what you did today, Don. And it was really funny. It was really funny. So that was my nickname from Lieutenant Sheehan.
Investigation. Take me through what happened with that, without, of course, giving anything away.
Yeah, no, it's and you know what? Whenever something happens, like the Boston Marathon, I was on the phone with the lead bomb tech from the Mass State Police all day, and we were trying to get up there. We just couldn't. We thought they were coming here. I knew those guys. The morning of September 2016 I was on the phone with the Jersey State Police, who were friends of mine that just handled that job. That's the first thing you do. Either you call the squad that's having the job, or the job that has a squad starts calling neighboring states, counties, departments or whatever and saying, listen, this is what we just had. So I just got off the phone with, actually it was Mike Clegg, who's a friend of mine. He's just recently promoted to lieutenant, but he was a sergeant in the Jersey State Police Bomb Squad. And we had a long conversation. He was laying everything out to me. I'm like, that's great. Getting some intel. We were gearing up for the UN General Assembly. So we had already brought a bunch of vehicles down to the office. And some of our equipment we were breaking out. And I remember it was Sergeant Chris Conley was working with us. And we had our Bearcat, which is our armored vehicle that we had set up with a robot with some equipment, specialized equipment on. We're having our conversation. Listen, this is what we had in Jersey. If we did have these devices, we would have to use, or we should use, or could use X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C tools, whatever they may have been.
Right.
And then, sure enough, we get this explosion in Chelsea, and we got up there. We had to fight a lot of traffic there. Everything was shut down. By the time we got there, all the aides had been removed, and they had a great evacuation. We still had a lot of packages that needed to be cleared on the block. So we had this post blast. Vehicles are riddled with shrapnel. We could definitely tell that this was not just, fragmentation from the ground. This was actually shrapnel from the device, because, pinholes, just all over these vehicles, windows blown out. Unfortunately, it was pretty well evacuated, but we ended up having to stop our post-blast investigation, and now we had to go back to bomb tech mode and clear a lot of garbage bags, suitcases, shopping bags, things that were, the device went off, people dropped everything and ran, or they were taken away in an ambulance. So now every one of those packages had to be treated as a suspect device, and that's what we ended up doing. And we ended up clearing. And we did a really good job. I think we cleared 8 packages in about 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Everybody worked hand in hand, quick x-raying, and then cutting. And now, once we were pretty happy with the fact that we had no more devices, we wanted to clear the whole block. So at this point, we ended up calling for another team to come from the office. There was only 2 teams working that night. Fortunately, we had guys coming in early for the midnight shift to start up at the UN. So now we just started calling guys in, because now the 911 system is through the roof. There are suspicious package calls all over the screen. The 911 dispatcher can barely keep up with them, because now a bomb has just gone off in one neighborhood. What is every other neighborhood doing right now? Looking out their window saying, oh, that's a bomb, that's a bomb, that's a bomb.
Yep.
So we really thought that we were going to end up like maybe having to call in other counties to come help out. Fortunately, it worked out that the guys were coming in for the UN. We just brought them in earlier, and they ended up started handling a lot of these outside devices. But we found a tremendous amount of evidence at the scene by the end of the night. So now we're working with the FBI also. So we're working hand in hand with the FBI. We still don't know whose case this is going to be. Is it going to be an NYPD case? Or is it going to be an FBI case? We don't know. But I was working with Pete Licata that night. Pete's a dear friend of mine. He just retired from the FBI as one of their senior bomb technicians. Great guy. So Pete and I decided that no matter who was taking this case, we were going to get going. We were going to start investigating this case from beginning to end, and we were just going to get going. We heard horror stories about up at the Boston Marathon where people were being held up by bureaucratic whatever, and evidence was actually being blown away, like just windstorm down the road, down into sewers and stuff like that. So Pete and I decided we were gonna cordon the block off. We were gonna call in as much help as we can. We used our crime scene unit, our evidence collection people, and the FBI's evidence recovery teams, dogs from everywhere, counter-terror dogs, patrol dogs, transit dogs, whatever. And we were going to clear this block, and we were going to start flagging every piece of evidence. And it wasn't until hours later, I have an ESU sergeant grab me, and I'm busy kind of like trying to get the scene squared away, and he shows me the picture of the second device now, a live device that is a few blocks away. So myself and Steve Sansone, we were working the case together. It was our job. We caught it. And we had a couple other guys. We had Jay Hallett, Timmy Brady came in from the office. And I'm not stealing the next job because we may be handling jobs all night long. This may be one of 50 or 20. I don't know. I don't know what we're dealing with. They just hit Jersey, now they hit New York. So I sent Timmy and Jay and Sergeant Connolly ended up going to the second device. So we're squaring the one device away, and this picture of a pressure cooker with a phone attached to it, wires, stuff like that. Your typical, bad device. And it turned out that they managed to get the device apart and safely put it into what's called a total containment vessel, which is a large sphere that we have, and it's bomb-proof. You can actually detonate about 30 pounds of explosives in it. They do this through the night, and we still don't even know whose case this is going to be. So it ends up around, I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. It was decided between the chief of detectives and the SAC from the FBI that the FBI was going to take this case. But it did make a difference. We used NYPD photographers. We used FBI evidence recovery guys. We used everybody else, NYPD bomb techs as subject matter experts, FBI bomb techs as subject matter, and we just found everything we could find. I mean, I actually found the label from the explosives that were used. We found parts of the pressure cooker. We found parts of the phone. We found important parts from the phone. We found a lot of stuff that night, and it ended up going until the next day. And then, of course, he ends up getting do a shootout in New Jersey the next day. So, I mean, thankfully, nobody was killed on our end. Some injuries here and there, some bad injuries. I'm sure some psychological trauma to the neighbors and the people who lived in that neighborhood for a while. But it all worked out.
How crucial is the relationship between a bomb tech and a canine? Because the work of what they do, it can't go unnoticed either. They're the ones that don't speak. They're the ones with four legs that just do their job and get in and get out. But it's essential to the operation. So from your own experience, what was your relationship like with those canines, and how pivotal was it to what you did?
Well, the dogs are great for searching out explosives. And so if you know how to train a dog to smell out explosives, and then you know how to work a dog to smell out explosives, they're an excellent tool. They're an excellent tool for clearing a room rapidly so that you can get on with your business. In the history of the New York City Bomb Squad, I don't think one of our dogs have ever missed a bomb. I don't think they've ever missed a bomb. I also don't think they ever found one. But I could share this with you. The dogs are so good. They are so incredibly good that me and Dan Richards were walking through a hallway in the United Nations, and it was a very long hallway with no furniture or anything in it. It was more like a long corridor in the basement of the UN. And one of the dogs that we had with us sat down, literally just sat down, as if she was indicating that there was something near us. But there was nothing there. There was no filing cabinets. It was just a hallway. And she kept on looking up. And so we went up into the ceiling panels, and up in the ceiling panels was a briefcase. Now, the briefcase didn't have any explosives in it, but the dog was so attuned to smelling out something that is different in their environment that she wanted to let us know that there was something in the ceiling that we should look at. And that's how good they are.
That's incredible.
It was interesting on the audio. Toward the end, before it cut off, which was the time of the explosion, there were for like a second, two separate interruptions in recording. And keep that in mind, okay? If I forget this, bring this to my attention later,
Okay.
because this ties in further with the investigation. So that's from the black box. So it really didn't help us decide one way or the other what caused this. So we worked constantly. We worked really well together with the different agencies. There always had to be 2 or 3 people at the morgue. And that's a really gruesome thing to be there. I don't care how how much you're a veteran or how tough you think guys are. It's a very difficult thing to stand there and watch. And you're also assisting, because that's the staff there was just overwhelmed with all these bodies coming in. So what we decided to do was that we would all take turns in rotation, so nobody got stuck there all the time. Most of the time, I worked in a hangar with all these different agencies. I ended up hooking up with a fellow named Ed Cattell. Again, he was worked for the FAA as an investigator, as a former Navy bomb tech. Really good guy. I mean, you could do an entire show just on him. But I had a personal rapport with this guy, personally and professionally. So we kind of linked up, working together, looking at all the debris that was constantly coming in. Also, they wanted for integrity purposes, which made sense. Somebody from 4 different agencies, again, on a rotation basis, inside one of the hangars, they have office spaces. And they hooked up a VCR with a TV screen. And the VCR tapes were taken from the Navy salvage ship and given to the FBI. And again, it's a joint task force. It's NTSB, it's FAA, and law enforcement. And we would have at least 4 people or more from different agencies sitting in this room for like about 4 hours at a time, watching videotape footage, which was recorded from the unmanned submarine. And again, at the bottom of the screen, you could see the floating, rotating compass, but you could see a course and heading. You can see longitude, latitude, to really pinpoint where it was at all times. So if we spotted something collectively, these 4 investigators, something that was there that possibly could have been missed, again, it's clear water on a sandy bottom, we were to report that. So that was kind of tedious, but again, we rotated, on a rotating basis again, so nobody's stuck doing, some tedious task all the time.
Again, these tests were conducted 4 years after the crash, April of 2000, Eglin Air Force Base, Fort Walton Beach, Florida.
Could I just add something to that, Mike?
Please.
This is from my notes.
Mm-hmm.
This was at the end of the report after 2 years, the NTSB. And let me tell you, there's some hardworking people. They have much more knowledge than I do with aircraft. I don't pretend to hold a candle to what they do. Again, I describe myself as a detective, a bomb tech, and I was there with many other bomb techs in the FBI to try to find if there was any physical evidence that could link this to terrorism, which of course we never found. But I want to make note of this. At the end of the testimony, the NTSB addressed in great detail about the 100 eyewitnesses that said that they saw something coming off the ocean and striking the plane. Small explosion underneath, behind the wing, in the belly of the aircraft, and then the large explosion. This is what they basically stated about the 100 eyewitnesses. And again, this isn't me. This is coming from their testimony. You can see it yourself on YouTube.
I'll link it.
All right. It's part of that 2 days of testimony, 5.5 hours each. It's very long, but very detailed. They stated that the witnesses were mistaken in what they observed. Many of these people, after this testimony by the NTSB to the federal government, felt that their statements were ignored. And that's when I think, from speaking to people, that lended itself to these conspiracy theories. Again, I'm not saying that I'm not a guy for conspiracy theories.
No, neither am I.
But I think by this, they didn't dismiss their testimony, but they said what they saw, that they were mistaken in what they observed. And that, I think, was personally upsetting to many people who took the time to come forward and give their statements.
Any intelligence that you get from intel or anything else, you got to take it as a serious threat. All right. All threats are credible until proven otherwise. All devices are credible until proven otherwise, whether you can see what they're constructed of or not. That particular device that they went had to be reconstructed. And at that particular time, I was down at the range. I believe I was the range safety officer. And I put together the wiring on that particular device with Detective Teemsma. You have to go through this, and you got to go through that device, and you got to figure out what they used, how they triggered it, and if it would have worked, because it means a lot when you go to court. Where they hit the switches, where did the switches work, what they use, you know, what kind of compound did they use, explosive compound. Now, I'm not going to get into the switches or compounds because people listen to this, and I don't want to give any of the secrets away. But they did a fantastic job. They all went down, did what they were supposed to do. You know what? When you play with fire, you're going to get burned. They shot a couple of these guys. And the bottom line is we have to do what we have to do at that particular time to get that situation under control. And as far as being ahead of the game, every detective has to be ahead of the game. Every bomb squad detective has to be 2 steps ahead of them. So your training comes into play. Your bomb techs from other countries, what they have, the feedback they get, the information they get, the intelligence from counterterrorism bureau, the intelligence from everybody in general. It means a lot because it comes down to the wire where you can figure out what they're doing, where they're coming from, and every informant that gives a piece of information is very credible, and we always follow up on it. And that's why you have to keep in mind that these terrorists are going to be around. They were around a long time, even before the World Trade Center. They have been around, all right? More on the domestic side than anything else. But as years to come, after we'll probably talk about that also, you know, you got a couple of wars coming up, and you got a lot of Middle Eastern bombers that you got to learn how they're making these devices and given a signature which they will use to build these so they don't blow themselves up. They don't want to get themselves blown up either. But if they do, hey, too bad. That's, you know, it's easier.
First night, we recovered 140 bodies. And they set up a temporary morgue in Mauritius. And at some point in time, a friend of mine, Mike Stapleton, who had a security firm here in New York, he moved one of his X-ray machines for scanning luggage out to Campbellton so that they could, at one point in time, they had body remains in a reefer out of Campbellton, like a trailer, truck trailer that had refrigeration on it. And one of the jobs a member of the bomb squad had to do was X-ray body parts for bomb components. And Pete Dalton took that job on. And God bless him for doing it.
Yeah.
You know, it took an emotional toll on him. You know, running victims to an X-ray machine for evidence, and then that got picked up. That got more finalized. That type of investigation got more finalized a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's emotional. You don't want to see people die. You know,
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things I do want to bring up is the Air Force perspective on this. And again, I was on active duty for the first 2 weeks of this investigation. And while on active duty, you know, we were looking at Stinger missiles. We're looking at what we left in Afghanistan, what the Soviets have in their SA-18s, 14s, and 12s, and their capabilities. And we're trying to do a threat assessment for Air Force assets around the world. And when they came out and says, well, you know, a Stinger missile wouldn't be capable of bringing down a 747, I have to contest that. I have to say, no, I think it can. And so the possibility of a Stinger missile hitting that aircraft and bringing it down, it's a strong possibility. The other thing I want to bring in is that we tried to eliminate a bunch of different things. And one of them was a bomb in the luggage hold. And Sergeant Mark Torrey of the bomb squad, I was with him on this particular day. We went through the luggage containers, the cargo containers, every one of them that was available over at Cavalton for explosive damage. And we couldn't see or find any evidence of a bomb going off in the luggage containers. All right. The other thing that you brought up, Lockerbie. And so this was part of the investigation that I didn't understand, and I brought it to the FBI's attention, is that the way that Lockerbie was solved, there was a radio that was placed in the luggage of that aircraft. And when that bomb went off, secreted in this radio, it blew parts of the radio out of the plane and they got sucked up by the engine. So when the plane crashed and they went into the engines act like, the front of the engines act like giant vacuums, right? And so if there was a bomb on a plane and it blew a part of the plane out of the plane, there's a possibility that it would get sucked into the engine, right? And that's how they solved Lockerbie. They started pulling the fans back on the jet engines, and within the fans, they found components of the bomb and components of the radio. All right. That's how they solved Lockerbie. My question to the FBI was, why didn't we pull the engines off the bottom of the ocean floor first and look in the engine fans? Now, I was out there and I'm thinking it's late fall now, and the engines finally make their way out to Cavalton, and they were put in, they weren't even raised on a table. They weren't even, these were Pratt & Whitney engines, there was 4 of them, and they didn't even bother putting them on an engine so that you could do an inspection. You had to climb down on the ground and look in these engines. And as far as I know, they only pulled back like 2 fans or 3 fans, and the engines were filled with sand from the bottom of the ocean. So I didn't understand why there wasn't a more comprehensive examination of the engines to rule out the possibility that there was a bomb on the plane, you know, or if Lockerbie, if that's how we solved Lockerbie, I would have thought that we would have paid more attention to the engines earlier to see if we would get lucky again.
That segues into your arrival to the bomb squad. Now, you're not a rookie by this point. You have 15 years under your belt. So this is a transition in which you're getting close. And granted, you didn't retire when you hit 20 years. You kept going for almost another 15 years. But you're getting to that midpoint in your career. I got to say, you know, so many E-men go into the bomb squad. Why is that? And why did you personally want to go into the bomb squad?
Well, I was asked that by psych services, because when you go into emergency, you have to be interviewed by psychological services in the police department. And then when you go to a specialized unit like the bomb squad, you have to be re-interviewed. And I basically explained to Dr. Harvey Schlossberg, who was also a police officer who got his PhD and was part of the beginning of the hostage unit with Frank Bowles. And he said to me, Kevin, why do you want to go to the bomb squad? I said, well, I'm getting on in years. I'm not as young as I used to be. I said, I'm really getting tired of climbing bridges and talking to crazy people and trying to get them to, you know, stop from jumping from bridges out windows, tired of jacking up subway cars and putting people in body bags. I said, so I thought maybe the bomb squad would give me some new horizons. And he goes, okay, what's the real reason? And I went and I looked at him. I said, I love the noise. He said, okay.
Well, there you go. And you're in the bomb squad during a unique time where they're carrying a lot of members now. I think it's like between 30 and 40 members. But back then, I mean, there was not nearly as many guys. And this is a citywide unit. It's not like, oh, you take Manhattan. Like the emergency service unit, for example, has trucks for each borough. So, I mean, they help each other out. If there's a large scale event, they'll go in Manhattan, they'll go help out Queens and yada, yada. But that's not the case with the bomb squad, nor the arson explosion squad. So joining during that time, this is a probationary period that you have to go through. Forgive me for my listeners that I adjust my microphone. You don't suit up right away. Take me through that probationary period of learning what it takes to be a bomb tech, especially when so many bombings are occurring in the city at this time.
Well, when I first got there, I was assigned to a team. We only had 16 people in a bomb squad. Most teams had 3 and some had 2. In order to work the chart that the bomb squad had, you had to have 2 people on duty 24/7. They worked the day shift, and the evening shift was 2 at night to 8 in the morning. It was an 18-hour shift. You also had to have a canine handler on each shift. So there was a lot of chart changes in that. I was put in a team with Danny Baldy and Ronnie McLean. Ronnie was the dog handler, and he'd been in the bomb squad for at least 10 to 15 years. I knew them both. I knew most everyone in the bomb squad because when I was assigned to Emergency Squad 1, the bomb squad was in the same building in the police academy on the 8th floor. So we knew each other, but not only by face, but by name. And I was dispatched to the range on certain days for canine training, and then explosive recognition from the range safety officer. I went there in February. In June, end of June into July, I went to Redstone Arsenal for training, along with 2 or 3 other new recruits in the bomb squad. I came back and I was assigned to the same team in, I believe it was that fall, September, October. We had a new CO, Bill McCarthy, and he evaluated all the teams. He was adding more personnel. And before I knew it, I was told by him I was going to be the lead in the team because Danny Baldy had retired. And I said, well, there's people in the team that have 15 plus years. They said, yes, but they have not received their EOD training. They're just canine people. And he said, and I have faith in you. And I went, well, that could be your big mistake, Lieutenant. I became a team leader rather quickly, along with some other fine people like Dennis Mulcahy, Steve Dodge, and I know you know a few of the names, Jimmy Carrano. The squad went larger and larger over the next 10, 12 years. We went from 3 in a team to 4 to 6 in a team. And that was 24/7. Because of a delay one time in responding to JFK Airport, the chief of department, Robert Johnston, turned around and told the bomb squad, you'll increase your capabilities so that you can provide 24/7 for any emergency. Now, I don't know the exact figures of the bomb squad. I don't think they want them known today, but they've got a lot more people than I would ever thought would have happened in the same confined space that we had with 16. So
This segment is called Rapid Fire, 5 hit and run questions from me and 5 answers from me. Are you ready?
ready.
First, funniest call you ever responded to. And if it's not G-rated, you could say pass.
Well, I responded to a suspicious package in Queens in a supermarket in a freezer, along with Charlie Epps and Eddie Hayes and Sergeant Guy Renzi. It was a yard. We used the robot. We opened the freezer. We reached in and we grabbed a 2 foot wide by foot deep legal envelope. And it was tied up with brown string. We shook it apart with the robot. It fell out. The contents fell out on the floor in the supermarket. We tilted the robot arm down so with the TV we could see. And what was inside was a skeleton arm and hand. From the shoulder down. And then we zoomed in closer. There was a note, handwritten note, and it said, "This is an armed robbery. Give us the money." So that was the end of that suspicious package that day.
Somebody's got a sick sense of humor, but it's funny. I gotta say it's funny. Second best piece of advice anyone ever gave you.
Don't do anything that would embarrass yourself, that would put you on the front page of one of the big city newspapers, and embarrass you and your family, and make sure you remember your family. And don't forget to give attaboys to the people that you're working with when they do a good job.
Good advice.
I think we were able to convince everybody involved. You know, let me back up and say this. When the mayor or the PC or the chief of detectives, if they feel you've got it, if they feel like, okay, you guys got a handle on this, you're working on it, you got suspects, you're putting a case together, that makes them feel, okay, that you've got this. All right, I trust these guys. They know what they're doing. It's kind of when you don't have it that, that happens. When I was having the Rockaway case that we talked about a moment ago, in the beginning, who are we looking at? I don't know. What do we got? I don't know. That's bad answers. Here, we didn't have that. Here, okay, we had this young man, here's his plate, we got his name, we have something to start with. We've got meat on the table right away. And I mean, there wasn't a single day in the case that significant developments happened. If it was like the next morning, me going down with Detective Patain and finding the gloves and locating the store that bought the liquor, and we moved on it really quickly, put a lot of people on it, and a lot of manpower, and we were able to make everybody running the case, or all the suits, if you will, they said, all right, these guys got this, So if it was a case where it was dragging on and we had nothing and nothing was developing and nothing was going on, I'm sure there'd be a different kind of pressure. Let's call it that, instead of, little pressure, a lot of pressure. I mean, all cases are important, but this is the one that, the fact that it was the first hate crime, you've got, Robert Johnson, the late Robert Johnson, he's since passed away, but he was the elected Bronx district attorney at the time, now he's got to worry about, he's got a very politically active community, and, what are we doing with this case? And we were lucky, we had excellent ADAs on it, our friend and longtime colleague, Jeffrey Luxman, who we did so many arson cases with Jeff. Jeff was the best friend we had in any DA's office. And then, of course, he was working with and one of his associates, Michael Cooper. Michael has since passed, of course, but two great attorneys. And, we got a lot of great help. And again, as I mentioned, Abby Sonnen, who was the assistant corp counsel who did the juvenile cases. These are people that we do fires to churches. We do big marquee investigations. So everybody felt like, okay, I've got my 18 people on this. And again, we had this in the bag, and these guys locked up before the end of the week. So we're always making them feel like we've got it under control. We're never given the reason to lose faith in us. So, but I mean, was there pressure? Yeah, you're going to have a fire to a church or an attempted fire to a church. You're going to get pressure. But I've done many fires to houses of worship. Unfortunately, people are surprised how many end up happening and how often. After a while, it becomes, all right, I got another one, and not to diminish it, but it's also too, Mike, like when you have a bombing case go on, like a pipe bomb would go off, and precinct is all flipping out. Oh, this is going on. I'm like, why are you so calm? I'm like, because this is not the first time I've done it. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I handle it. This is why a unit like us exists. And I think it's like anything else. You have good people that know what they're doing, and we had wonderful bosses that were, John Santos was great, Fred Manzalilla was great. Out there making everything happen for us. I mean, it was, we had the A team out there, and of course, you have a lead investigator like Detective Perrette, you can't go wrong. I mean, he's, wonderful investigator. He comes from an arson investigating family. His dad was an arson investigator. He works in the private sector now doing that. I always enjoy working case with him. He's very knowledgeable. And he took really all the heat and the pressure because, when it's your name on top of the folder, you're taking the heat, but he handled it well. This is again, Mike, this is who we are. This is
Dan Richards' story.
Danny, like I said, Danny, my first job I had was with Brian Toohey, John Harvey, Joe Patowski, and Danny. And a lot of times it's just you and your partner going to the job. Since they like to bust my horn, since I was an outsider, I was a guy from Ohio that didn't speak New York, they decided that all of them's going to go in the van and make sure I do the job right. So they gave me such a hard time. Like, hey, what are you going to do, rookie? What's this? What's that? I go, I don't know. And actually, I had a box tied to the base of a tree. So that even made it worse. But when it came down to it, once the job got started, I couldn't ask for anything better from these guys. They totally shut it off. What do you need? Look out for this, do this. But going out there, it was a test. And Danny is a unique individual. There's people that come in and out of your life that you always remember. And Danny's one of them. They tell you right to your face 5 minutes after meeting you, I don't like you. You annoy me. Brutal honesty. But a half an hour later, that same guy, Danny, I really need $500. Can you really help me out? Danny would go to the ATM machine or go somewhere, bring back 500, goes pay me back when you can. He'd shoot off to Paris on a weekend, maybe take the Monday off, come back. Hey, Danny, where'd you go? I went to Paris. I go, what? But and he loved this country. He loved his family, certain ones. This is a tragic story. His brother,
Billy.
He loved his co-workers, but he's just such an entertaining vehicle to listen to, because you don't know where he's going to go. You think. And some of the best memories I had is just sitting here watching him and Steve Burbridge go back and forth. I mean, it was classic. And he's sorely missed. He didn't have to go down there that day. But the cop in him, the person that wanted to help somebody else, that's within him, went down there. He didn't go down as a bomb tech. He went down there to help people, save people. And, Dan McNally and Danny was right near him. This is weird, two Dannys at the same time. One survived, one didn't. That's how life is.
January 13th, 1997. And for some reason, nobody talks about this job. And we're coming up on 25 years since it happened. And I might have to dedicate a whole show to it. It is a day in which you guys were crazily busy because there's 4 letter bombs sent to a Middle Eastern newspaper at the United Nations. It was headquartered in the United Nations, January 13th of 97. So the first one was handled by Rick DeGuerra and Mike Murray.
Mike Murray, right?
Yeah, the next one was handled by Charlie Hill, and I can't remember the other individual's name.
Kevin Barry.
Well, no, Kevin Barry was there with Jeff Oberdier. That was the last one. He was there for the last one, Kevin Barry and Oberdier. But one of them was handled by you and Paul. So this job, which you would think it would get a lot of press, but it really didn't. Legitimate devices. Okay. I remember it now. Don Sadowy was down there with Steve Burbridge too. And Charlie Hill as well. So but for a job like this that doesn't get a lot of play, give me the ins and outs of it. Getting down there, handling letter bombs, which like any bomb is perilously tricky, but it's smaller because it's condensed in this letter. Take me through that.
Well, these guys were a little crazy because the first thing they did was to put it together. They put it together with the Eastern Bloc C4. We have C4, it's white. Their C4 is pink. And it's called Semtex. Semtex is a super high explosive. It's not going to take your hand off. It's going to rip half your body off. It's not so it's a very, very strong, powerful HE. They call it a high explosive. Anyway, when we got there, Paul and I, we had another device. We found another device in the mailroom, and we took it out, and we decided to X-ray it and figure out exactly where the battery was. If you want to take the initiator away, so we used it's like a water gun. We shot out the battery with it. And it's more like turning off a light bulb with the switch, except you can unscrew the label before you can turn the switch on. If that's a good analysis, I don't know. But anyway, we shot the battery out, and then we just had the envelope with the Semtex in it. And what they did was, for the blasting cap, they had military blasting caps, but to make it flat in the envelope, they took a pair of pliers and actually squeezed the thing flat. You know, to me, that's a little crazy.
Just a little bit.
They'll take your fingers off those things. So, but anyway, they did. I think they did about 24 bombs, and they mailed them to all throughout the world. And I think we had everything was labeled, everything was numbered actually. And I can't remember, like, it was 19 and 20 and 21. I think I remember seeing these things, you know. And they were built to go. Whoever did that was pretty good, but we just were better as far as taking them apart and all that. We had the better tools, you know. But it was high explosive Semtex, right in the basement of the UN. We did this stuff. So
Yeah, I'm surprised this didn't get a lot of press. Think about it. It's the UN. It's New York City.
Yep. But you know what? That's okay. That was okay by me. I hate copycats. You know, I hate people that, oh yeah, they did that. We'll do that. You know. So we never found out if they came out of Alexandria, Egypt, but we never found out. It was never really investigated or anything. I don't know. More or less the FBI story, or the CIA, being out of town. But they were a little tricky. But we got them all apart. Everybody lucked out that day.
We have an intelligence division that we get calls frequently. We had gotten calls frequently about, sensitive things that might come our way, to kind of give us a heads up, keep us prepared. If there's going to be dignitaries coming into the city from all different parts of the world, especially like the General Assembly. But in incidents, the best thing that we can do is share information, pool information, and that's power. And with that type of information is where you get the apprehension, you get the evidence, and you always try to do the right thing.
Before I transition to some of the other jobs, I never asked about this, and I should, and shame on me for not to this point. But those preparations for the September to December is just a marathon for you guys, because you get the General Assembly, and then you get the Thanksgiving Day Parade, and then you get the Rockefeller Center tree lighting, which happened last night, and you have to be on your toes for all of this. But for the General Assembly, it's especially difficult because of the fact there's so much traffic. You got cars sitting idly by. That's a chance for somebody to put a device. You have dignitaries, and politics is always volatile, as I don't have to tell you, and they might be the target of something, especially if it's a country that's experiencing wartime turmoil. The preparation for a UN General Assembly with the dogs, with the intelligence, and of course, being aware of your own surroundings and picking up on things that as a cop might seem fishy to you. Tell me about that for the bomb squad.
Well, as far as the General Assembly is concerned, we're there prior to that, maybe 7 to 10 days prior to that, to secure the area. Constant sweeps, identification that we're all given new identification for that particular event, especially in the UN, because there's so many people, there's so many, between the FBI, ATF, and other agencies, and also other NYPD, that if you need to be there, if you belong there, that's where your tour is going to be, then you need to have the proper identification and so on. With the tree lighting, which was yesterday evening, there's an enormous amount of preparation that goes prior to that. It's not like the day before or a couple of days before. It's usually once that tree is into New York City space, it's our responsibility to keep everybody safe, and that's when everything starts to get locked down little by little, and try to do the best we can to get the pedestrians where they need to go, whether it's to a theater or to work or to something, and also secure the area.
The thing that I don't understand is, like, how nuts you have to be to stand out in the freezing cold. And if they want to, fine. But it's the freezing cold. It's New York, which is especially cold here in the tri-state area.
It is
just for like cold. Something that's 5 seconds long, or you're watching the parade. Like, okay, if you want to watch on television, fine, have at it. But I am not going to stand there in November freezing my keister off just for that.
Yeah, well, they must have a secret that I don't know about. But
I don't know. And you're jam-packed with people.
Between New Year's Eve and the tree lighting and stuff, we're out there working and stuff. But we get breaks and it's time to like sneak away for half an hour and take care of business and then come back. But I don't know how these people, they'll get there like early and then they get a space and they're not moving. So I don't know how they do it, but God bless them.
I don't know either. Like after a while, I'll be hungry. I'm like, I need to have some food. So, hey, as you said, God bless.